The day my dad found out he had been switched at birth and was just a fake young master of a wealthy family, his whole world collapsed. He clung to my mom and wailed dramatically. "Wife, I'm not the eldest young master of the Wang family anymore. You're not going to leave me, are you?" My mom calmly placed the deboned fish into my bowl. Looking utterly speechless, my dad continued howling. "Woo-woo, my life is so bitter. 7 years of marriage. I drove luxury cars and lived in a mansion. Played endless video games every single day. I've completely wasted my life. You're not allowed to leave me." My mom ignored him. Dad panicked. "Willow, say something." Mom handed him a glass of water. She said, "You've been crying for so long. Have some water and soothe your throat." Dad was at a loss for words. He became frighteningly calm. After a long while, he said, "Willow, you have no heart." I had thought their loveless business marriage had finally come to an end. Who would have known that years later, the two of them would celebrate their golden wedding anniversary together on a yacht, even promising to continue their marriage in the next life. Chapter 1. My father's eyes were red from crying, and there were still tears clinging to his eyelashes. He didn't take the glass of water. He stopped crying and making a scene. He fell silent, frighteningly calm. He said, "Willow, you have no heart." Then he turned around and went into the bedroom. His back looked lonely and desolate. I had never seen him like that before. In front of me, he was always laughing and joking. Even though he constantly told me that my mother was like a spirit born from a block of ice, cold-hearted and impossible to warm no matter how hard one tried, he still carried out every single thing she asked of him without fail. He would say that one day he'd find a chance to teach her a lesson, to let her taste a bit of bitterness, but then he would keep calling her wife and darling, his tone sickeningly sweet. I asked Mom, "What's wrong with Dad? He's crying so sadly. Why won't you comfort him?" Whenever I cried, Mom would always comfort me patiently. Mom stroked my head and said, "You're too young. You don't understand adult matters. Eat." I puffed out my cheeks, annoyed. Ever since I was born, I've heard that sentence who knows how many times. I'm not stupid. I can tell that sometimes there's something strange between them. Mom is always distant and cold toward him. Once, Dad drank too much and muttered something like, "Willow, you still can't forget him." When he sobered up, I asked him who he was. He also told me I was just a child and wouldn't understand adult matters. Actually, I know everything. Dad and Mom had a business marriage. There were no feelings between them, except for their wedding day. They never appeared together in public again. To the outside world, Mom claimed to be the only daughter of the Liu family. But several times, I overheard my maternal grandparents arguing. My grandmother would scream hysterically, cursing my grandfather for being a heartless ingrate. She said she had stayed by his side from nothing, when they had no money at all, yet he still kept another woman outside and even had several children with her. And on top of that, he wanted to pass the family business to an illegitimate son. To fight for power, Mom decided to form an alliance through marriage with the Wang family and married Dad, who at the time was a carefree playboy who only knew how to spend money, eat, drink, and have fun. They say that when my father found out he would have to enter a business marriage, he made a scene at home for days and even went on a hunger strike in protest. But the moment he saw my mother, he nodded faster than a chick pecking at rice. There had only ever been one child in the Wang family, my father. My paternal grandparents doted on him excessively, but it was very strange. As soon as the paternity test results came out, they immediately held a press conference and announced they were cutting off all ties with him. All of a sudden, he had no parents, and Mom didn't comfort him either. He must have been devastated, at the very least, considering he always cooks such delicious food for me. I'll go comfort him a little. Chapter 2. After finishing dinner, Mom went to the study to work. I quietly pushed open their bedroom door and slipped inside. The spacious room was empty. I scratched my head. Strange. I had clearly seen Dad come in, and he hadn't gone out since. Just as I was about to leave and look for him, a muffled voice came from somewhere. "So you finally remembered to come comfort me." I listened carefully. The sound was coming from the bed. Under the messy blankets, there seemed to be the outline of a person. I let out a sigh. My dad is already a grown man, yet he's still like a child. Whenever he gets upset, he likes to hide under the covers. I walked over and tugged the blanket down. As it slipped, it revealed a bare back, well-defined muscles, though several scars ruined the overall look. Good grief. It's one thing for Dad to hide under the blanket when he's angry, but why does he have to strip naked too? Does that somehow make it easier to vent his anger? In a low voice, Dad said, "Willow, this time, holy, why is it you?" He turned his head, saw me, and nearly jumped off the bed in fright. He had just lifted his upper body when he seemed to remember something. Snatching the blanket, he wrapped himself up tightly. Then he forced a smile. "Alexander, why is it you? Where's your mom?" As he spoke, he craned his neck to look behind me. "Mom went to work," I said. I climbed onto the bed and patted his head whenever I was unhappy. That was how they comforted me. Don't be sad, I told him. Even though you don't have your dad and mom anymore, you still have Alexander, and my mom will stay with you forever. I wasn't sure whether my mom still wanted him or not, but his eyes were still swollen. I had to make something nice up to cheer him up. Dad froze for a moment. A mist formed in his eyes. He reached out from under the blanket and pulled me into a hug. My Alexander is the best, he said. All those days cooking for you and helping you with your homework weren't for nothing. Unlike your mom, that heartless woman who won't even come see me. He let out an angry snort. When she wants to talk to me again, I'm going to teach her a proper lesson. She needs to know I'm not someone she can mess with. The next second, George, Mom suddenly walked in. She paused when she saw the state the two of us were in. Almost imperceptibly, she sighed. Then she lifted me out of Dad's arms and said, "Your dad's parents, your adoptive grandparents, asked you to go back to the Wong family for a while. Pack up your things and take everything with you." Carrying me toward the door, she paused and shot Dad a rather disdainful look. "In the future, watch yourself in front of the child. Stop walking around half-dressed. Set a good example." Dad sat on the bed, looking dispirited, and gave a weak "oh." I tilted my head. Something felt off. He didn't seem upset about being kicked out of the Wong family. It felt like he was upset about something else entirely. Chapter 3. When it came to going back to the Wong family to pack up belongings, Mom and Dad hadn't originally planned to bring me along, but I clung tightly to Dad's pant leg and refused to let go. He gripped his pants desperately with one hand and tried to pry me off with the other. Speechless, he said, "Why is this little rascal so strong? Honey, help me out here." Mom opened the car door and said, "Let him come with us." Dad paused for a moment, then picked me up and put me in the car. After we arrived at the Wong residence, the housekeeper saw me and greeted me warmly. "Young Master Alexander is here. I'll go get you the lychees you like." I smiled happily. "Okay, thank you, Auntie." "Get what?" Grandma came downstairs and snapped coldly. "He's not a grandson of our Wong family at all. I've already let it slide that he's been eating and drinking here for free all this time. What right does he have to keep eating now?" Mom and Dad's expressions turned ugly. Instinctively, I tightened my grip on Mom's hand, my chest feeling tight and uncomfortable. Grandma hadn't been like this before. After Mom and Dad got married, they rarely brought me to the Wong house, but whenever I came, Grandpa and Grandma would prepare lots and lots of delicious food and fun things for me. Dad was just about to lose his temper. He gritted his teeth and said, "You, Alexander." Mom patted my back and said coolly, "Go to your dad's room and help him pack. We'll come upstairs to find you in a bit." I nodded obediently. Then I quietly opened a small crack in the door and secretly watched what was happening. Grandpa said, "George Wong, our Wong family raised you for so many years. Do you admit how much effort and money we spent on you, and yet you've accomplished nothing, correct?" Grandma said disdainfully, "Unlike our biological son, who got into a top university on his own and is doing exceptionally well at work." Dad looked at them coldly. I had never seen that expression on his face before. It was frightening, enough to make someone's heart tremble. Grandpa narrowed his eyes and leaned back against the sofa, crossing his legs as he continued, "Besides, without the Wong family, you wouldn't have been able to marry the eldest daughter of the Liu family, let alone have a son with her. You have to admit that too, right?" Grandma added from the side, "And you took our biological son's identity for so many years. We can't just let that slide, can we?" Dad asked, "So, what exactly do you want?" There wasn't a trace of expression on his face. The eyes that were usually gentle and kind when he smiled were now sharp and completely devoid of warmth. Grandpa, no, he should be called Brandon now, looked like a vicious wolf. Drooling greedily, he said, "Hand over the South City project. Consider it repayment for raising you." The moment he finished speaking, Dad burst out laughing. "I thought you were in such a hurry to hold a press conference and publicly cut ties with me to ease your biological son's resentment." Dad stood up, hands in his pockets, smiling casually as he said, "Turns out you're after that project. Quite an appetite you've got." Mrs. Wong's expression changed. "George, how can you speak like that? We raised you for 31 years. 24 years, Mom interrupted. She tugged on Dad's hand and pulled him behind her. "He married me at 24. After the wedding, whether it was daily expenses or personal spending, he never used a single cent from the Wong family again." Dad leaned toward Mom's ear and tugged at her sleeve. "Honey, I didn't spend my days partying or living extravagantly. I just played video games with my friends." Mom shot him a faint sideways glance, and Dad shut his mouth in grievance. But the icy hardness in his eyes suddenly melted, and the corners of his eyes and brows carried a look of smug delight. "He's very handsome and loves dressing up. He can pull off all kinds of styles and outfits. Every time he picks me up from school, all the parents and kids stare at him." My deskmate once said, "Alexander, your dad is so handsome. Alexander, when I grow up, I want to marry someone like your dad." The girl sitting behind me shyly tugged at my sleeve and asked, "Alexander, is your dad married?" I looked at her as if she were an idiot. Chapter 4. Even though he's that handsome, he still couldn't captivate Mom. My mom is a woman of thought, depth, and substance. She would never be dazzled by something as superficial as good looks. Brandon choked on his words, puffing up his cheeks as he said, "You're speaking up for him. Willow Lou, you'd better get this straight. From now on, he has nothing to do with the Wong family. If you still want to continue cooperating with the Wong family, the Wong and Liu families will not continue any cooperation," Mom said, picking up her handbag. "As for the project, we can." Dad cut in. "The project won't be handed over to you either. As for the debt of raising me, I already repaid it when I was 12. He looked at his mother, mockery in his eyes. "Isn't that right, Chairman Wong, Madam Wong?" Brandon's eyes widened in shock and fear. Like a punctured balloon, he instantly deflated, losing all his arrogance. Mrs. Wong's face turned deathly pale. She collapsed onto the sofa without saying a word, not even daring to look up at Dad. Suddenly, I remembered the several scars on Dad's body, and the stitch marks. I had asked him before how he got them. He said he fell by accident. I didn't really believe that. Could a fall cause injuries like that? They looked terrifying. Mom patted his hand. "Let's go pack." There actually wasn't much to pack. Most of Dad's belongings had already been moved to our home when he got married. Only some clothes and a few collectible models were left. Mom glanced at the wardrobe. "Leave the clothes. We'll buy new ones." Dad nodded happily. "Okay, I'll listen to my wife." I secretly pouted. Wasn't he just saying earlier that he'd teach Mom a lesson? Besides, he has so many clothes they fill several wardrobes, more than Mom's. After packing the models, Dad sealed up the box. "All done. Let's go." Dad carried the box. Mom held my hand, and we went downstairs together. In the living room stood a refined and handsome man, speaking with Brandon and his wife. Mom's grip on my hand tightened noticeably. The man noticed us and walked quickly toward her, his expression excited. "Willow, is it really you?" Mom stared at him without moving. I gently shook her hand, and she suddenly snapped back to her senses. She bit her lip. "Makoto." The moment he heard that name, Dad's pupils contracted sharply. He bit down on his lower lip, the fingertips holding the box turning white. I felt a jolt in my heart. Could this be the one Mom could never forget? Mrs. Wong stiffly urged, "Are you done packing? If you are, then hurry up and leave." Makoto looked us up and down. After a moment, realization dawned on his face. "Willow, so you married that fake young master?" I secretly glanced at Dad. His face seemed to be covered in a layer of frost. Mom said, "That's none of your business." She took my hand and started to leave. Makoto stepped forward and blocked our path. "Willow, you probably don't know this. I'm the real eldest son of the Wong family." Mom rolled her eyes. "You," she said. "Congratulations on finding your biological parents. Willow, after we graduated from college, I never saw you again." "You." "Hey," I cut him off. "This guy is really unlikable. Can't he tell Mom is already impatient?" "You're blocking our way," I said. "Could you please move aside?" Makoto lowered his head, as if only just noticing me. He paused, then asked, "Willow, is he your son?" Mom nodded. I said, "You'd better move. Grandma Wong is really fierce. She won't let us stay long." Dad couldn't hold it in and burst out laughing. Mrs. Wong stood there clutching her chest, gasping for breath. Mom led us away without looking back at the Wong house. Makoto remained standing there, his gaze dark and unreadable. Chapter 5. Over the next few days, Dad became very strange. It was like he'd lost his mind. He gave all the housekeepers time off. At 5 in the morning, he got up to make breakfast. At 6, he yanked me out of my warm blankets. Sitting at the dining table, I squinted at the bowl in front of me. Inside were 10 heart-shaped fried eggs stacked neatly on top of each other. My head felt foggy. He said, "Alexander, tell me, how do I treat your mom? Am I gentle, considerate, patient, and attentive?" I yawned and nodded. He continued, "And I never argue back, never talk back, never lose my temper, right?" "What?" My eyes widened. He seemed to have a very inaccurate understanding of himself. Crying, throwing tantrums, threatening dramatic acts, he's mastered all 3 classic meltdown moves. Otherwise, how would he have ended up with an entire garage full of cars? I was about to shake my head, but I met his bright, intense gaze and the tight expression on his face. "Forget it. Mom said he'd been kicked out and was in a bad mood these days. I should just go along with him." The day before yesterday, he washed all of Mom's lingerie and hung them out in several grand rows with great fanfare. Even Mom, who normally wouldn't change expression even if a mountain collapsed in front of her, had her face twist in anger. In the end, she endured it. Yesterday, he made porridge and must have dumped in half a bag of sugar. It was so sweet it burned the throat. Yet Mom drank it without changing her expression. If Mom could endure it, I could too. So I nodded against my conscience. Dad's expression softened a little. Then what do you think of my looks? He asked. I looked at the handsome face leaning close and gave him a thumbs up. Unbelievably handsome. After all, Mom personally certified that. She once said Dad traded his IQ for his good looks. That's quite a high evaluation. He asked, what about my figure? Excellent. He exercises regularly. His muscle lines are smooth, and his abs are clearly defined. Dad beamed, rubbed my head, and asked, then why do you think your mom can't forget that Makoto? Silently, I flipped one of the fried eggs over. As expected, the other side was burnt black. Speechless, I said, maybe it's because your skills aren't very good. What? Dad shot to his feet, his face instantly flushing red. Why your mom actually told you about that kind of thing? I jumped in fright. If you burn eggs like this, do I really need Mom to tell me your skills aren't good? I'm not stupid. He paced back and forth several times. So that's the reason. It's actually because of that. Sigh. Honestly, how could she tell a child something like that? If she had any requests, she could have just told me directly. Do you think I wouldn't satisfy her? He suddenly stopped, clenched his left fist, and slammed it into his palm. No, I need to study this properly again. I nodded blankly. Yes, please study how not to burn eggs. At least flip them properly. All right, Alexander, Dad said. Hurry up and eat. After that, I'll take you to school. School? I really wanted to shake his brain hard. It's the weekend. Is it? He checked his phone and nodded. Then go back to sleep after you finish eating. I was speechless. Mom, is he taking revenge on society or something? I took a sip of milk to calm myself, and nearly spat it out. Good heavens, why is this milk salty? After Mom woke up, Dad enthusiastically brought her a glass of milk. She took a sip and calmly said, I think I left my phone in the bedroom. Could you help me get it? After Dad went inside, Mom immediately grabbed the cup and poured the milk into the sink at lightning speed. From the bedroom, Dad called out, Honey, your phone's not in here. Did you leave it somewhere else? Oh, it's on the coffee table. I must have put it there and forgotten, she replied. She paused, glanced at me, sitting lifelessly on the sofa, and said, Alexander, come to the company with Mom. Dad was dissatisfied. He frowned. It's the weekend. You're still going to work? There's something urgent I haven't finished. After changing her clothes, Mom called out, Let's go, Alexander. Chapter 6. The Wang family has already announced they've cut ties with George Wang. He's nothing but a discarded pawn now. Do you even understand that? The furious, harsh questioning jolted me awake. I quietly pushed open the lounge door and peeked through the crack. I saw Grandpa slamming his hand on Mom's desk in anger. Grandma chimed in from the side. The Wang family has gone too far. They actually used a fake son to fool us. Willow, we can't just let this go. We have to demand an explanation from them. Mom didn't even lift her head. She continued flipping through the documents in her hands. Grandpa was so angry he looked ready to explode. He snatched the papers from her and threw them onto the floor. Willow, are you deaf? Can't you hear us talking to you? Mom leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, completely composed. What exactly do you want? Grandma stepped forward, her expression stern. Make Wang Corporation hand over their newly developed new energy project to us. Otherwise, we'll publicly accuse the Wang family of fraud. They used a fake to deceive us. Mom turned her head slightly and let out a silent laugh. So that's what this is about. I was wondering why you'd suddenly stand up for me out of nowhere. The veins on Grandpa's forehead bulged as he roared. Willow, what do you mean by that? Back then, there were so many families who wanted to form a marriage alliance with you. You were the one who chose George. And what happened? You picked a counterfeit. Your cooperation with the Wang family has already been minimal these past few years. Now it's impossible to continue. Do you have any idea how much we stand to lose? Grandma lifted her chin arrogantly. Your father's right. We're cleaning up your mess. I pouted unhappily. Just before this, the two of them had been extremely warm toward Dad, calling him good son-in-law over and over. They smiled so hard the wrinkles at the corners of their eyes stacked up. Every time Dad visited the Liu family, they would have a full banquet prepared and eagerly pile food into his bowl. And now they were talking about him as if he were some emotionless commodity. Mom stood up. She's tall. Grandpa and Grandma had to look up at her. She said, Dad, the marriage candidates you chose for me, the youngest one was 16 years older than me. Were you trying to find me a husband or trying to find yourself a new father? Or, Mom blinked slyly, are you resentful that you couldn't acknowledge a wealthy father yourself, so you used this roundabout method to latch onto someone else? Why you? Grandpa clutched his chest and collapsed into a chair, trembling so hard he couldn't speak from anger. Mom, you're really ridiculous. If I hadn't married George back then and secured control of Liu Corporation, the one sitting here today would have been Dad's illegitimate son, and he would have been kicked out of the house long ago by the woman he keeps outside. Yet here you are, following him to my office to make a scene. Did you eat too many walnuts trying to nourish your brain and end up with a stroke instead? Grandma's face turned deathly pale as she screamed. You ungrateful little brat, I'm your own mother, and this is how you talk to me. I covered my mouth tightly to stop myself from laughing out loud. Mom is usually a woman of few words, always carrying that cool, aloof goddess aura, but when she really starts talking, she can anger someone to the brink of collapse. They brought this upon themselves, Mom said. Let me give you a piece of advice, don't go looking for trouble with George, otherwise, I'll expose your embezzlement. Her face turned cold, her gaze sharp, and don't come here stirring up trouble when you've got nothing better to do. Do you still think I'm that little girl you could manipulate at will? Get out. If I have security throw you out, you'll need to wear a few extra layers of masks when you go outside. The two of them glared at Mom resentfully. She didn't back down in the slightest. She tilted her chin toward the door. Get out. After they left, Mom stood by the window and made a phone call. Her voice wasn't loud, and I could only vaguely make out that she seemed to be asking someone to investigate something. Chapter 7. A few minutes later, there was another knock on the door. Mom snapped her folder shut and barked irritably. Come in. The person outside pushed the door open cautiously. Willow, it's me. Makoto walked in. Mom looked slightly surprised and lifted her chin. What are you here for? He placed a bag on her desk and gently pushed it forward. Open it and take a look. Inside the bag was an exquisitely packaged square box. Inside the box was a scarf. Mom frowned. Not understanding, Makoto said. Willow, do you remember 10 years ago on your birthday, you said you wanted a scarf hand-knitted by your lover, but at the time, I was too busy and didn't have the time. Because of that, you made a huge scene and even broke up with me. At this point, Makoto paused. His expression dimmed. I knitted this scarf myself, but I never got the chance to give it to you. Take it, consider it my belated apology. Okay. An apology? Mom knitted her brows and secretly rolled her eyes. Fine, I got it. You can leave now. Makoto clearly hadn't expected to be dismissed so quickly. He stood there blankly for a moment. Mom asked, do you need something else? Makoto frowned slightly. Willow, can I treat you to a meal? When we were dating, I didn't have much money. I never treated you to a proper dinner. Can you give me a chance to make it up to you? Mom glanced at the time. All right. Makoto's eyes curved in a smile. He wasn't as handsome as Dad, and his smile didn't have Dad's flair, but there was a particular gentleness in his brows and eyes. No wonder Mom had been captivated by him back then. After putting on her coat, Mom asked me, Alexander, are you hungry? I ran to her and nodded frantically. Yes. She pinched my cheek. Let's go. Someone's treating us today. Makoto hadn't expected Mom to bring me along. His smile faded slightly. Willow, isn't it inappropriate to bring a child to dinner? What's inappropriate about it? Aren't you wealthy now? Can't you afford to treat my son too? That's not what I meant. Makoto forced a smile again. Let's go. He opened the front passenger door and gestured politely for Mom to get in. She ignored him and pulled me into the back seat instead. Makoto awkwardly closed the door. On the way, I saw Mom's phone screen light up. Dad was bombarding her with messages. A string of hug me and heart emojis filled the screen. Mom sent him an address and typed, pick Alexander and me up here in an hour. Makoto's car stopped in front of a Western restaurant. Willow, this place has been open for many years. It has a great reputation. Mom glanced at the sign. Alexander doesn't like Western food. Let's switch. Makoto looked troubled, clearly disappointed. But I searched for a long time to find this place. Mom wasn't buying it. She said crisply, drive forward. There's a Chinese restaurant ahead. We'll eat there. All right. Makoto restarted the car. I secretly stuck out my tongue. Dad has used this trick countless times before. Mom's already immune to it. While waiting at a red light, Makoto furtively took out his phone and sent a message. I noticed the corner of Mom's lips curl slightly, as if she were mocking something. Chapter 8. After we entered the restaurant, Mom asked, do you have any private rooms available? Yes, ma'am, the waiter replied with a polite smile. Willow, let's not take a private room. Didn't you used to prefer eating somewhere lively? Makoto said. Oh, that was because you were always spending my money back then. Of course I had to be frugal. When it's your money, I don't feel bad spending it. The waiter tried very hard to suppress the corners of his mouth from curling up. Makoto's face turned livid. Are you eating or not? Mom was already getting impatient. Makoto compromised. Let's take the private room. Mom stuffed the menu into my hands. Alexander, take a look. Order whatever you like. Okay. My eyes curved into crescents as I smiled. I ordered 10 dishes in one go, each one heavy on oil and spice, the kind Dad normally wouldn't let me eat. Makoto's face twitched slightly. He didn't order a single dish himself. He handed the menu back to the waiter. That's all. After the waiter left, he sighed faintly. Willow, you've changed a lot. Under the table, Mom quietly turned on the voice recorder on her phone. Oh, why do you say that? She asked. Makoto looked deeply sentimental, reminiscing about the past. I remember you used to prefer light flavors. You never ate spicy food. Mom scoffed. That's because you couldn't handle spice. So I adjusted to your taste. In reality, I went home every day and ate 2 extra packs of spicy snacks. Makoto froze slightly. Moisture welled up in his eyes. Willow, I didn't know. You endured so much for me. Uncle. I crossed my arms and instructed him seriously. That's not quite right. You need to narrow your eyes just a little more so the tears look fuller. That way your eyes will seem darker and brighter. When the tears fall, they should look like pearls slipping off a broken string. That's what really makes people feel sorry for you. What did you say? The moisture in Makoto's eyes vanished instantly. His expression went blank. Mom curled her fingers and lightly flicked my forehead. What nonsense are you talking about? Where did you learn that? Dad. I pouted indignantly. Whenever Dad does that, you patiently comfort him. You even buy him watches, cars, and tons of clothes and accessories. Makoto looked like he'd just been struck by lightning. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Mom frowned slightly and thought it over carefully. Reluctantly, she admitted, that does seem to be the case. Encouraged, I beamed. Uncle, you should practice in front of a mirror more. But that expression doesn't suit you. You should switch it up. My dad looks way more pitiful than you when he does it. Mom couldn't help but laugh and lightly patted me. Such a precocious little rascal. Eat your food. It took Makoto quite a while to recover from the shock. After hesitating for a long time, he finally picked up a piece of a dish that looked the least spicy. Then he grabbed his cup and gulped down several mouthfuls of tea. I saw Mom suppressing a smile while eating. Makoto said, Willow, I know you suffered a lot for me back then, but all these years, I've never forgotten you. The other day at the Wong house, when you looked at me, your eyes were still so full of feeling. Oh, Mom responded flatly, without the slightest emotional fluctuation. Makoto paused, then cautiously asked, See, can you give me another chance? Let's start over. I froze mid-bite, staring at him in disbelief. Does he think I don't exist? He's trying to replace my dad right in front of me. Mom let out a cold laugh. Makoto, is your brain installed backward? Makoto bit his lower lip slightly. Willow, we broke up back then over something as trivial as a scarf. I admit I was wrong and neglected your feelings. But now I know my mistake. I swear I'll cherish you properly from now on. Just give me another chance. Okay. Mom's face went completely expressionless. I'm married. I have a son. Makoto sighed. I know. But George is a good-for-nothing. He doesn't deserve you. Even the only thing he could boast about, his family background, turned out to be fake. It was stolen from me. We're the ones meant to be together. And if we rekindle things, it would also allow the Wong and Liu families to cooperate again. It would benefit you greatly. He looked at me earnestly. Don't worry. I'll treat Alexander as my own son. Mom picked up a napkin, wiped her mouth, crumpled it up, and tossed it into his bowl. Makoto, she said coolly, after all these years, your brain hasn't developed at all, has it? Makoto's face flushed the color of pig liver. Chapter 9. Mom said calmly. You arranged reporters at that Western restaurant just now, didn't you? Makoto stammered. Why, what are you talking about? She continued. They were going to photograph me having dinner with you and my son, then publish headlines about the rightful heir reclaiming his place, rekindled romance, or getting back together after a broken relationship, weren't they? Of course not, Makoto denied loudly. Mom cut straight to the point. Life hasn't been easy for you in the Wong family, has it? The Wong family's internal relationships are complicated. You've suffered quite a few setbacks after joining the company, haven't you? Makoto's eyes flickered. His lips trembled slightly. Mom smiled knowingly. Looks like it's not just setbacks. You must have caused a huge mess, and even Brandon can't protect you anymore, right? You had no choice. You wanted to strengthen your position through a marriage alliance, but as the real young master, who suddenly came back, your behavior and style don't fit in with the rest of them. No one respects you. You've run into wall after wall, haven't you? She stared at him directly. So you remembered me, your ex-girlfriend. You plan to use emotions and public opinion to pressure me into submission and force cooperation between the Wong and Liu families again. All color drained from Makoto's face. Fine beads of sweat formed on his forehead. Willow, I'm not, Mom interrupted. After I changed locations, you messaged the paparazzi again, didn't you? They're probably squatting outside this private room right now. She tapped her fingers lightly on the table. Take out your phone. Makoto looked at her in confusion. Ever since we entered this room, you've been recording, haven't you? You deliberately said all those sentimental things to lure me into saying something affectionate about you. Then you'd edit it later and turn it into evidence that we rekindled our old romance. The refined, gentle facade on Makoto's face collapsed instantly. He looked like a ferocious beast bearing its fangs. He roared. Willow, all of this was supposed to be mine. I'm the real eldest son of the Wong family. I was supposed to have a privileged life, endless money, and I should have been the one who married you. We would have had a child together. Everything was stolen by that useless George. You're not allowed to insult my dad. I stood up on my chair, hands on my hips, glaring at him furiously. Mom is always busy with work and often travels on business. Most of the time, it's Dad who stays with me. Dad is amazing. He plays games with me, tells me stories, attends every single school event, and even takes me to find Mom, although once we find her, he sticks to her more than to me. He just doesn't like doing business. But he's not useless, Mom once said. Just because he's a man doesn't mean he has to be the breadwinner or achieve great career success. You're just a brat. What do you know? Willow and I were each other's first loves. Ours was real love. Mom let out a cold laugh. Makoto, do you remember Sophia? Makoto stuttered. How do you know about? His pupils dilated, unable to hide his guilt. Did you really think I broke up with you over a scarf? Mom said coldly. On one hand, you told me you were too busy. On the other, you were passionately kissing your junior schoolmate. Did you think I was an idiot? And another thing, eat more fish eyes when you have nothing better to do. Maybe they'll improve your eyesight. The way you looked at me that day wasn't affectionate. It was disgust. The moment I saw you, I knew you'd stick to me like snot you just can't shake off. I looked at Mom with deep admiration. She truly sees through everything. Makoto's face turned ashen. His back stiffened. Mom asked, Alexander, are you full? I nodded. Then let's go. Your dad should be here soon. As she led me to the door, she lifted her phone slightly and said, Makoto, if those paparazzi outside dare to spread rumors, I'll release this recording. When that happens, you won't be able to keep a foothold here anymore. Chapter 10. Mom and I stood by the roadside. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting a golden glow over her. I had a vague feeling that she was doing something behind the scenes. When Dad's background was exposed, she didn't turn cold and heartless like Brandon and his wife. She didn't calculate Dad's worth in terms of interest like Grandpa and Grandma. And she certainly didn't mock him like some of Dad's so-called friends. She was calm, just like always. To her, the chaos that had everyone else in an uproar wasn't even as important as whether I had eaten properly today. I used to think she didn't care about Dad, but it seemed things weren't the way I had imagined. I tugged at her hand. Mom, are you protecting Dad? Cutting off cooperation with the Wong family to back him up, driving Grandpa and Grandma away and using their leverage to keep them from troubling Dad, handling that rotten first love so he couldn't spread rumors and upset Dad. There were faint dark circles under Mom's eyes. She already had a heavy workload, and with Dad going a little crazy these past few days, plus all these messy issues to handle, she definitely hadn't been resting well. She gently patted my head. Alexander, don't tell your dad about today, okay? I nodded obediently but couldn't help asking, why? If Dad knew Mom had done all this for him, he'd probably be so happy he'd take off like a rocket. Mom pressed a hand to her forehead and sighed helplessly. Your dad is already dramatic enough. If he finds out about this, he'll come up with even more creative performances. Anyway, Alexander, promise me you absolutely won't tell him. I nodded firmly. It's not just Mom who's afraid of Dad's theatrics, I'm afraid too. These past few days of dark cuisine experiments have already been more than I can handle. Only much later did I understand that the two kinds of dramatic weren't the same. Wife, Alexander. The car came to a steady stop in front of us. Dad's outfit was distinctive. He was wearing a retro printed shirt, 3 buttons undone to reveal his sharply defined collarbones. Sunglasses rested on his high nose bridge. His hair was styled in that effortless, tousled way. When he stepped out of the car, he even raised an eyebrow at us with a smile. Every girl passing by was staring at him. Have you been waiting long? He attentively opened the front passenger door and carefully shielded the top of the frame with his hand. Traffic was a bit heavy. As Mom got in, he leaned closer and lowered his voice. Honey, you actually asked me to pick you up today. Does that mean you missed me? I covered my mouth and giggled. Mom's ears turned slightly red, but her expression remained calm. Alexander wants to eat the sweet and sour pineapple pork you make. That's it. Dad pouted. As he walked back to the driver's seat, he muttered, and here I thought you'd finally grown a conscience. After the car started moving, he kept glancing at Mom through the rearview mirror. Finally, he couldn't hold it in anymore. So, honey, who did you have lunch with this afternoon? Mom scrolled on her phone. A client, a man or a woman? Does it matter? Of course it matters. Dad's voice rose before he quickly lowered it again. I'm just concerned. You know someone's been eyeing my wife lately. I leaned forward between the seats. Dad, what did you do at home this afternoon? His eyes darted away. Studied recipes. What did you come up with? Well, he cleared his throat, looking rather proud. I developed several new dishes. Chives stir-fried with broccoli, tomato braised bananas, and my most famous creation, chaos pearl white jade soup. Mom's phone slipped from her hand with a thud, but she didn't pick it up. She just froze in place, suppressing my inner scream. I cautiously asked, what's chaos pearl white jade soup? Dad said proudly, first you boil fish into a milky white broth, then you add tangyuan, wontons, rice cakes, and dumplings all together and cook them, very slowly. I turned my head to look at Mom. Her face was blank, her eyes unfocused, the corner of her mouth twitched slightly. Dad isn't just going a little crazy, he's taking revenge on society. Dear. Mom bent down to pick up her phone and called him gently. A faint blush spread across Dad's cheeks. In a ridiculously soft, bubbly voice, he replied, "Yes, honey," Mom said calmly. "In the future, any innovative projects in the kitchen must submit a feasibility report to me and Alexander first." I nodded furiously in the back seat. Dad puffed out his cheeks and reluctantly agreed. Fine. Chapter 11. When we got home, Mom changed her shoes at the entrance a little more slowly than usual. Dad tossed the car keys into the ceramic tray with a crisp clink. He himself, like a peacock who had successfully won a mate after showing off its feathers, strode lightly toward the kitchen to pour us water. I quietly tugged at Mom's sleeve and whispered, "Mom, will the feasibility report really work?" She looked down at me, a faint smile flickering in her eyes. Lowering her voice, she replied, "It's a delaying tactic. At least it'll keep him occupied for half a day figuring out the format." Sure enough, when Dad came over with the glasses of water, his brows were slightly furrowed, as if he were contemplating a century-defining problem. "Honey," he leaned toward Mom, who was checking her emails. "How exactly do you write a feasibility report? Is there a template? Do I need data analysis? Like a golden ratio argument for the sweet and sour balance of tomato braised bananas?" Mom didn't even lift her eyelids. "Figure it out yourself." Dad deflated instantly, slipping his slippers along the floor. He came to squat beside me, his peach blossom eyes full of pleading. "Alexander, my good Alexander, help Daddy out." I shook my head solemnly and walked away with my hands behind my back. "Dad, we must respect procedure." Mom said innovation requires regulation. Dad let out a tragic wail and collapsed onto the sofa. That evening, he didn't dare serve any of his innovative projects. He behaved himself and made sweet and sour pineapple pork, stir-fried vegetables, and seaweed egg drop soup. Before bed, I carried my storybook into their bedroom, an unspoken rule in our family. On weekends, I get to choose to sleep with Mom and Dad. Dad had already changed into his pajamas and was leaning against the headboard with a tablet in hand, reading recipes. I glanced at the screen. It looked like an introduction to molecular gastronomy. Mom sat on the other side, a laptop resting on her knees, the screen's glow illuminating her calm profile. "Mom, tell a story." I squeezed in between them. She closed her laptop and took the book. Dad immediately put down his tablet as well, stretching out his arms to wrap both of us in an embrace, his chin resting on Mom's hair like a giant koala. Halfway through the story, Mom's phone vibrated. She glanced at it and ignored it. Dad, however, reacted like a hunting dog catching a scent. He lifted his head immediately and frowned. "Who's that? Messaging so late?" "Work," Mom replied succinctly and continued reading. "Oh." Dad lay back down, but his arm around her tightened slightly. I wasn't clueless. That Makoto definitely wouldn't give up so easily. Mom had intimidated him yesterday, but when desperate people get cornered, who knows what underhanded tricks they might try. Sure enough, the next morning at breakfast, Mom's phone kept ringing. After reading a few messages, her face turned cold. Dad was peeling a boiled egg for me. Seeing her expression, he asked, "What's wrong? Did you run into a problem?" Mom rubbed her temple and turned the phone screen toward him. It showed several entertainment news headlines. Shocking. CEO of Lu Corporation secretly meets former lover, clear signs of rekindled romance. Aftermath of the Wong family's true and fake heirs, real heir spotted dining with Willow, old flames reignite. The accompanying photo showed Mom and Makoto outside the Chinese restaurant yesterday. Makoto was standing slightly sideways. The angle was carefully chosen, making it look almost like he was gazing at her affectionately. Mom was holding my hand. Only half of my back was visible. The egg slipped from Dad's hand and landed back onto the plate with a dull thud. He stared at the screen. The playful, teasing expression on his face drained away like a receding tide. The corners of his mouth slowly flattened, and his gaze sharpened in a way that was almost frightening. My heart tightened. Oh no. This time, Dad was truly angry. He asked, "You took Alexander to eat with him yesterday?" Mom replied, "I just wanted to warn him not to cause trouble, and, incidentally, avoid another round of dark cuisine experiments." She played the complete recording from yesterday. Dad's face brightened again. "Honey," he said stickily, scooting closer and practically draping himself over her, visibly excited. "I knew you saw through that hypocritical villain's true colors long ago. My wife is sharp-eyed, stunningly beautiful, and unbelievably intelligent. Look at him. Instead of focusing on proper work, he resorts to these cheap tricks just to grab your attention. Absolutely shameless. Unlike me," he declared proudly. "I only move you with my one-of-a-kind chaos pearl white jade soup, winning your heart with sincerity. I'd never stoop to those crooked schemes." Mom pressed a hand to her throbbing temple. "Is that really the point?" Dad blinked. "If that's not the point, Then what is? He suddenly slapped the table. Oh, I get it. He's trying to steal the magpie's nest, take you and Alexander away. Mom was speechless. Chapter 12. I stuffed the last bite of my sandwich into my mouth and said with puffed cheeks, Makoto wouldn't dare release those articles because he's wary of the recording Mom has. So someone else must be behind this. Right, Mom. Mom patted me approvingly. Alexander is very smart. I see. Dad rubbed his nose awkwardly. Could it be someone from the Wong family? Unlikely. It doesn't benefit them much, Mom said, thinking seriously for a moment. Then she suddenly frowned and murmured, could it be them? Who? I leaned closer to ask. No one. Mom picked up a tissue and wiped my mouth. Finish eating and let your dad take you to school. Adult matters aren't for you to worry about. I'll handle it. The atmosphere at school felt strange. Quite a few people were pointing at me behind my back. They whispered behind their hands and occasionally let out faint, contemptuous laughs. My deskmate leaned closer and whispered, Alexander, is it true your dad isn't from the Wong family anymore? Her big eyes were filled with confusion, worry, and just a hint of curiosity. I put down my pencil and nodded. Yeah, the paternity test showed he isn't their biological child. Then, she hesitated. Will your mom stop wanting your dad? My mom says sometimes adults don't get married because they love each other, but for other reasons. Now that your dad doesn't have that reason anymore. I thought about it and replied, no. My mom said what she valued was my dad's handsome face. My deskmate propped up her chin and nodded seriously. That's true. Your dad is better looking than TV celebrities. When the bell rang for recess, I went to the restroom. As I turned the corner, I heard voices near the sinks. Someone said, Alexander's dad is a counterfeit. Now that he's been kicked out, he probably left with nothing. Right. His mom's the CEO of Lu Corporation. Do you think she'd keep a fake around? Exactly. Maybe in a few days he'll have to change his last name. It was a few boys from my class. They always liked to gather together and gossip about others. I took a deep breath and walked over, shouting, what did you just say? They froze. The tallest one, Gabriel, stepped forward. We were talking about your dad. So what? Your mom's already dating someone else. Sooner or later she'll dump your dad. Then you'll be a kid without a father. Gabriel's smile was vicious. The Bai family had lost to Mom in business before. He'd always secretly hated me but didn't dare provoke me openly. Now that he'd found an opportunity, of course he wanted to mock me mercilessly. Why aren't you saying anything? Did I hit the mark? Alexander, you're just the kid of a counterfeit. What are you so proud of? From now on you'd better keep your tail tucked. Otherwise, your new stepdad will beat. I rushed forward and punched him straight in the face. Mom once said she sent me to martial arts training so that idiots would have no choice but to reason with me. Mission accomplished. He clutched his eye, and the others stumbled back in fright. I didn't stop. I grabbed his wrist and swept his leg out from under him. He yelped and fell to the ground awkwardly. Say that about my parents one more time. I looked down at him. Tears welled up in his eyes, half from pain, half from fear, but he still tried to act tough. You dare hit me? I'll tell the teacher. Your dad is. Go ahead. I lifted my chin. Perfect timing. Let the teacher hear how you've been spreading rumors and slandering others, damaging someone's family harmony. One of the boys muttered. But, the news did say your mom and someone else. That's fake, I shouted. Someone made it up on purpose. And besides, whether my dad is from the Wong family or not, he's still my dad. He treats me very, very well. If I hear any of you talking behind my back again, I'll beat you into pig heads. They trembled, unable to squeeze out a single word. I felt extremely satisfied. Mom was right. Sometimes fists work better than words. I swept my gaze around them. What happened today? You're not allowed to tell anyone. If I hear even one word. I kicked a small pebble at my feet. It shot forward and hit the trash can in the distance with a loud clang. They all shuddered in unison. I dusted off my hands, lifted my chin, and walked away proudly. Chapter 13. After school, Dad came to pick me up. He was in his usual flamboyant mode, leaning against his sports car, taking off his sunglasses with a smooth motion that instantly drew a wave of attention. It was as if those news articles hadn't affected him at all. Grinning, he asked, Alexander, did you miss Dad at school today? I looked at his smiling face and suddenly felt a little sad. Had he heard those ugly words too? For someone who cares so much about his pride. He frowned slightly. What's wrong? Why do you look so down? He reached out to touch my forehead. I shook my head and climbed into the car. As he started the engine, he asked casually, did someone at school say something about you? My nose stung, and I nodded. TSK. He steered with one hand and reached over with the other to ruffle my hair. Ignore them. Back when I was the Wong family's young master, people used to say behind my back that I was useless except for being born lucky. Now that I'm not, they've just found new words. People who want to gossip will always find a reason. What matters is that we know who we are. Right. I looked at him suspiciously. Such philosophical words actually came from my dad. He noticed my stare. Why are you looking at me like that? Overwhelmed by your father's charm again? Forget it. I decided not to tell him about how I defended his honor today. Oh, right. Dad suddenly seemed to remember something. His eyes lit up. To comfort my precious son's wounded heart, Dad will take you for ice cream. The biggest size. We won't tell your mom. My spirits instantly soared. Yay. Chapter 14. When we got home, Mom was already there, sitting on the living room sofa with her laptop open and a stack of documents spread out in front of her. The atmosphere felt heavy. Dad even changed his shoes more quietly than usual. He winked at me, signaling for me to sneak upstairs. Stop right there, Mom said without looking up. Dad instantly stood at attention, a bright smile plastered on his face. Honey, working again. So hardworking. So hardworking. Shall I cut you some fruit? George, come here. Mom closed her laptop. Dad shuffled over and sat close beside her, muttering in a low voice. Honey, I confess, I took Alexander out for ice cream, just a small one. The kid was upset at school today. I had to comfort him. So much for not telling Mom. I crossed my arms and looked at him. Adults really can't be trusted. Mom didn't respond to that at all. She simply turned the laptop screen toward him. We've traced the source of those entertainment articles, she said calmly. It was my father who leaked them, but there were people from the Wong family pushing things behind the scenes. Dad blinked and froze for a few seconds. Then his mouth drooped dramatically, and he collapsed bonelessly against Mom, rubbing against her like a clingy cat while wailing in an exaggerated tone. Honey, how could your dad do this? Does he just hate seeing us happy? Does he have to tear apart our poor, star-crossed love? Mom tilted her head slightly from all the rubbing. A trace of helplessness crossed her face, but her voice remained steady. He's trying to use the rumors to force you to leave. Then he can pressure me to choose someone more valuable for a marriage, alliance, or get back together with Makoto and resume cooperation with the Wong family. As if. Dad suddenly sat upright, indignant. Do you think my wife would ever get back together with an ex, especially a rotten one? Honey, you have to stand up for me. Right now I have nothing left except you and Alexander, and they're still trying to bully me like this. As he spoke, his voice took on a trembling, tearful tone again. I quietly looked away. Here we go again. This move works on Mom every single time. Sure enough, Mom raised a hand and rubbed her temple as if she had a headache, but her other hand gently patted his back. Enough. Stop acting. I'm already handling it. How are you handling it? Dad leaned in immediately, curiosity replacing sorrow in an instant. His mood shifted faster than flipping a page. Mom said calmly, I've asked the legal department to gather evidence. We're preparing to sue a few of the most aggressive media outlets as a warning to the rest. As for my father, her eyes turned cold. I found evidence of his past tax evasion and fraudulent invoicing. It's enough to put him away for a few years. My wife is so fierce. Dad revived instantly, clinging to her arm and shaking it excitedly. As expected of my queen. Then, honey, is there anything I can help with? Maybe I can go parade in front of your dad, that evil old man, and annoy him to death. Mom pulled her arm back and said expressionlessly, as long as you behave yourself and stop researching things like Chaos Pearl White Jade Soup to torment Alexander and me, that will be the greatest help. Dad pouted helplessly. But that's just my way of expressing my overwhelming love for you. Honey, you don't love me anymore. You're rejecting my heartfelt cuisine. The vein at Mom's temple throbbed violently. She took a deep breath and reached out to pinch Dad's endlessly babbling mouth shut. In the end, his three masterpieces, chives stir-fried with broccoli, tomato braised bananas, and the very grand-sounding Chaos Pearl White Jade Soup, never made it to the dinner table, because Mom mercilessly rejected them at the feasibility report stage. Her reasoning was, after risk assessment, this project poses uncontrollable hazards to family members, especially their digestive systems, and the projected return, in terms of taste enjoyment, is negative. Proposal denied. Dad slumped over the dining table like a duck that had lost its dreams. Honey, you've changed. You weren't like this before. Mom took a calm sip of water. What was I like before? You used to. Dad thought about it, his voice weakening. Actually, you were kind of like this before too. When it came to rejecting his bizarre ideas, Mom had never shown mercy. Chapter 15. The incident at school still ended up reaching my parents. When Gabriel's mother saw her son's swollen cheek, she dragged him straight to Mom's company to make a scene. Mom had just finished a meeting. She leaned against the door of her private lounge, looking at Dad and me. We were sitting on the floor, surrounded by a messy circle of yarn. That scarf had accidentally been discovered by Dad last time. He'd pinched it between two fingers, examined it with disdain, and said, "This, not even a pattern. And he had the nerve to give this as a gift. Isn't that embarrassing?" Then he tossed it neatly into the trash and solemnly declared, "Honey, just wait. I'll knit you a heart-filled scarf that's beautiful and fashionable." I rested my chin in my hand, watching the yarn in his hands get more and more tangled. Honestly, he'd be better off researching recipes. When Gabriel's mom burst in, Dad was still wrestling with the yarn, sweat forming on his forehead. President Lou, just look at what your child did to my son. So vicious at such a young age. You must give us an explanation. Gabriel covered his face, sobbing dramatically. Dad threw the yarn aside and sprang up from the floor, his face flushed red, eyes wide. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Our Alexander is the most well-behaved child. He never starts trouble. Your son must have been talking nonsense first. Gabriel's mom planted her hands on her hips, her voice sharp. Mr. Wong, that's unreasonable. My son's face is swollen. There's clear evidence. Kids arguing is one thing, but your Alexander actually hit him, and so hard. He must apologize, and you must compensate us for medical expenses and emotional distress. Mom sat behind her large desk, hands folded, listening coldly. After they finished, she turned her gaze to me. Alexander, tell me what happened. I straightened my back and repeated word for word how Gabriel and the others had called Dad a counterfeit, said he'd be abandoned sooner or later, and spread rumors about Mom dating someone else. After hearing it, Dad's eyes grew even redder, this time not from anger, but from grievance. He turned and threw himself into Mom's arms, his voice muffled. Honey, they're bullying me. They said I'm useless except for my face, and now even that isn't worth anything. They said you'll throw me away sooner or later. Boo-hoo. Gabriel's mom probably had never seen a man in his 30s complain so righteously while clinging to his wife. She was momentarily speechless, her expression like she'd swallowed a fly whole. Mom patted Dad's back soothingly with one hand while picking up the intercom with the other. Her voice was calm and steady. Secretary, have security escort this lady out. Also, contact the legal department. Send a lawyer's letter to the Wu family for defamation and infringement of reputation rights. And inform the school that I expect strict action regarding verbal bullying on campus. Willow, why you're going too far. My son just said a few careless words. How could your child hit him? Look at his face. Just careless words. Mom lifted her eyes. They were as sharp as ice blades. As a parent, do you consider yourself sensible? Why does your son speak like that? Don't you know? Gabriel's mom's face stiffened. Please, Mom said coolly. If you don't leave now, I don't mind having security assist you. Gabriel's mom's face flushed red, then pale. In the end, she dragged the still sniffling Gabriel away in something close to a retreat. Alexander, come here. I lowered my head and shuffled over to Mom. Although Mom usually dotes on me, she has principles and boundaries. She never scolds me in front of outsiders, but in private, she always teaches me patiently. Dad couldn't help pleading. Honey, let it go this time. Alexander only did it for me, Mom said calmly. Next time, don't hit the face. I shot my head up, stunned for half a second before nodding vigorously. Okay. Dad immediately scooped me up and spun me around. My son is amazing. Then he leaned toward Mom, eyes sparkling. Honey, you were so cool just now. That aura, at least 9 feet tall. A few sentences and you crushed them completely. As expected of my wife. Chapter 16. Mom rubbed the bridge of her nose, looking slightly tired. But when she saw Dad's proud, basking in glory expression, the corner of her lips still curved faintly. Stop flattering me. And George, were you about to rush out and argue with her just now? Dad immediately stood up straight and raised both hands. I was not. I was going out to cheer for your majesty, but you didn't even need me. You handled it all by yourself. Heh. He leaned over and began kneading Mom's shoulders attentively. Honey, you've worked hard. You still have to deal with boring people like that for me and Alexander. Let me help you relax. Mom closed her eyes, enjoying the service. If you caused less trouble, I'd be even more relaxed. When have I caused trouble? Dad protested. I've been very well behaved. Okay, I haven't even been in the kitchen much lately. That reminded him of his rejected innovation projects. He pouted. Honey, can't you reconsider my feasibility report? I really think Chaos Pearl White Jade Soup has artistic value. Mom didn't open her eyes. She said one word. Get lost. Okay. Dad replied obediently. Mom always handled things decisively. After she dealt with the most aggressive media outlets spreading rumors, the rest quickly sensed the shift in momentum and retreated. The articles were quietly deleted. As for Grandpa, Mom directly mailed copies of part of the evidence to him, with a short note attached. If there's a next time, I'll submit it for investigation. There was complete silence from that side afterward. The Wong family also seemed to quiet down. No more small tricks. Makoto disappeared entirely. Dad continued dressing flamboyantly every day, picking me up and dropping me off at school, researching normal recipes, and, persistently, clinging to Mom. The only real change was that he truly began taking knitting seriously. He swore to the heavens that he wouldn't just knit Mom a scarf, he'd knit her a shawl, and knit me a blanket too. Mom and I exchanged a glance and silently chose not to comment. The living room carpet was often scattered with balls of yarn. Dad would sit cross-legged in the middle, watching tutorial videos on his tablet. He awkwardly worked the knitting needles in his hands, muttering, knit stitch, Pearl stitch, add 1. Wait, that's not how theirs looks. Knit, unravel, unravel, knit again. The expensive cashmere yarn became increasingly fuzzy under his relentless experimentation. Sometimes when Mom came home from work and saw him looking as if he were facing a great enemy, she would pause to watch for a moment. Then she'd shake her head and walk away, a faint, almost imperceptible smile at the corner of her lips. I think Mom must really love Dad. That's why she goes to such lengths to protect him, gives him an unlimited black card, and patiently soothes him. No matter whether he has an impressive family background or not, she loves him all the same. Chapter 17. Early in the morning, Mom sat at the dining table with a serious expression, as if she were facing a particularly thorny problem. Dad and I didn't even dare to breathe too loudly. After frowning and hesitating for a long while, Mom finally made up her mind. Tomorrow night, you two are coming with me to a banquet. I shot my head up. Mom was actually willing to bring Dad to a public event. She used to attend these occasions alone. Was it to completely shut down the rumors? Dad immediately perked up. His back straightened. His eyes lit up. You're taking me? Really? What kind of banquet? What should I wear? Mom replied. A senior in the business world who has taken good care of me. It's a banquet to celebrate his golden wedding anniversary. Just dress normally. Roger that. Dad threw down his chopsticks without finishing his meal. I'll go pick my battle robes right now. Honey, what style do you prefer? Wild and untamed, elegant and restrained, or pure-hearted college boy? Mom forcibly suppressed the twitch at the corner of her mouth. A three-piece suit. No tricks. Dad's eyes dimmed instantly. His lashes trembled slightly. He pursed his lips and looked at Mom pitifully. Except for our wedding. This is the first time you've taken me to a public event. Oh no. If he kept this up, Mom wouldn't be able to resist. Sure enough, her tone softened. Just, don't go overboard. In an instant, the clouds cleared from Dad's sky. Got it. Don't worry, honey. He ran off excitedly to try on clothes. I quietly asked Mom, why didn't you bring Dad to public events before? She looked utterly helpless and closed her eyes briefly, as if unwilling to revisit the memory. Not long after we got married, I took him to a banquet, she said. He was only 24 at the time. He already looked very young. She paused, searching hard for the right word, and he dressed himself up exquisitely. People thought he was a male model I had kept. They secretly asked me where I'd booked him and whether I could recommend a similar one. Mom pinched the bridge of her nose and sighed. I had planned to use that banquet to establish an important connection. Instead, I was surrounded all night by people asking how to keep male models. I tried very hard to suppress my laughter. Mom took a sip of water and continued. What made it worse was that the person I needed to meet was gay. He tried to flirt with your dad. Your dad insulted him from head to toe and nearly made him faint at the banquet. And then, I asked, barely holding back my grin, after we got home. Your dad clung to me and tearfully complained that he'd been harassed. That did sound exactly like Dad. Did you comfort him? I asked. Mom stiffened slightly and coughed twice. He was crying so dramatically. I just casually humored him a bit. I strongly suspected that was an understatement. And then that man blocked my path in business. It took me another 6 months to fully gain control of Lou Corporation. I was speechless. Dad had always thought Mom didn't want to acknowledge their relationship publicly because she looked down on him. Turns out it was because of the romantic chaos he caused himself. Chapter 18. The banquet was held at a private estate. After Mom vetoed 8 of Dad's flashy outfit options in a row, he finally compromised and chose a classic black 3-piece suit. He was dressed properly, but that face and that innate flair couldn't be hidden. The tailored black suit outlined his broad shoulders and narrow waist. He had loosened his tie slightly, revealing a hint of collarbone. He held tightly to Mom's arm, chin slightly raised, like a peacock guarding its treasure. Mom wore a gold strapless evening gown with a black tasseled shawl. Her temperament was cool and refined. She responded gracefully to every greeting from the guests. I wore a small suit and stayed close beside them, curiously observing everything around me. At that moment, 2 silver-haired yet energetic elders approached, surrounded by others. Willow is here, said Mr. Law in a booming voice, his gaze kind. And this must be your husband, George? Mom's eyes curved into a respectful smile. Mr. Law, Mrs. Law. Congratulations on your golden wedding anniversary. Wishing you both lasting happiness. This is my husband, George, and my son, Alexander. Dad, for once, put away his playful demeanor. He stood straight, posture elegant and composed, showing just the right amount of respect. Mr. Law, Mrs. Law, congratulations. Wishing you both longevity and enduring love. His voice was clear, his manners impeccable. He truly looked like a well-bred young gentleman from an elite family. Mr. Law laughed heartily and patted Dad's shoulder. Young man, not bad. Calm in honor and disgrace, that's good. There was meaning behind his words. He clearly knew about the recent turmoil. He turned to Mom again, admiration in his eyes. Willow, You have good judgment. When husband and wife are united, they can cut through metal. The storms outside are nothing but passing clouds. Mom smiled slightly. Thank you for your guidance, Mr. Law. Mrs. Law also smiled warmly and took my hand. Alexander has grown so much. Then she looked at Dad kindly. George, right. I've heard Willow mention you often. You cook well and take good care of the child. In a family, harmony is what matters most. Everything else is superficial. Dad flushed slightly at the praise, the tips of his ears turning red, but he responded politely. You're too kind, Mrs. Law. It's only what I should do. After a few more pleasantries, the Law couple moved on to greet other guests. Mom was soon surrounded, discussing business matters. Dad consciously led me a little farther away, brought me some desserts and drinks, and stood quietly to the side with a glass of champagne, his eyes following Mom the entire time. As I ate cake and looked at him like that, I suddenly realized he wasn't entirely the same Dad I knew at home, the clingy drama king who loved acting spoiled in front of Mom. He had his pride, and he had his sense of measure. George, you actually have the nerve to show up at an event like this. A familiar voice cut through the air. Makoto stood before us, holding a champagne glass. A magpie occupying someone else's nest, a counterfeit who stole another's place, and you still dare to make an appearance? He looked Dad up and down. That suit. Willow bought it for you, didn't she? Figures. After leaving the Wong family, you probably can't even afford decent clothes anymore. Dad set down his glass, the corner of his mouth lifting into a faint, amused smile. Oh, and here I thought it was someone important. Turns out it's young Master Makoto. What's this? Did the Wong family not get you new clothes? That velvet, he clicked his tongue lightly. The cut's a bit outdated, and the color makes your complexion look sallow. I'd suggest finding a better tailor next time. Makoto's expression stiffened for a moment before he resumed his hypocritical smile. Sharp tongue. That's all you have left, George. Relying on your face to charm Willow into supporting you. How does it feel to live off a woman? Oh, wait, you're not even a kept pretty boy anymore. Just someone of uncertain origin. Makoto, Dad interrupted calmly, his eyes darkening. Have you ever wondered why the Wong family was so quick to abandon me? I called them Mom and Dad for over 30 years. With the Wong family's wealth, what difference would one more adopted son make? Especially one who could help strengthen ties with the Liu family. Do you know why Brandon and his wife never dared come to me demanding repayment for raising me? Makoto's lips moved, but no words came out. Dad's questions left him speechless. Dad's smile widened slightly. That rotten swamp of a Wong family. I stopped wanting it a long time ago. And you really think you picked up treasure? Since you once did me the favor of cheating and freeing my wife for me, I'll give you a piece of advice. Look into what happened 19 years ago. Makoto tightened his grip on his glass, his eyes unreadable. Without another word, he turned and left. I counted on my fingers. 19 years ago, that would have been when Dad was 12. That day at the Wong house. Dad had also mentioned that year. What exactly happened back then? Could it have something to do with the scars on his body? Chapter 19. After the banquet, Dad sat in the car and began dramatically recounting his grievances. Honey, you didn't see it. Makoto was vicious. Every word he said was like a knife. It stabbed me right in the heart. If you don't believe me, feel it. He grabbed Mom's hand and pressed it against his chest. Her fingertips touched his warm chest. Her fingers curled slightly, but she didn't pull away. Honey, it hurts. Dad blinked his moist peach blossom eyes, lashes glistening. Did you hear how he insulted me? He called me a kept pretty boy living off you. Said I'm of unknown origin. I couldn't even refute him. I leaned forward from the back seat, resting my chin on the back of Mom's seat. But Dad, you did refute him. You even told him to look into what happened 19 years ago. Dad choked on his words and shot me a quick glare that clearly said, little traitor, don't ruin the act. Then he turned back to Mom with pitiful eyes. Honey, you heard him. He wronged you before, and now he's trying to bully me. You have to protect me. Don't give him even the tiniest chance. Mom finally withdrew her hand and looked out the window at the neon light streaking past. Her tone was calm and even. Just that one word. Dad wasn't satisfied. He leaned closer, almost brushing her ear. Honey, what does mean? You have to be clear. Will you always want me? No matter whether I'm a Wong family heir or not. No matter what people say, you'll still want me, right? I held my breath and secretly watched Mom. In the shifting light and shadow, her profile looked cool and sharp, but her lips didn't seem as tightly pressed as before. After a long moment, she turned her head and looked at Dad's face, which was filled with nervous expectation. She reached out and gently brushed a stray lock of hair off his forehead. George, she said softly but clearly, don't be afraid. You will always have Alexander and me. Dad's eyes lit up instantly, like sparks catching fire. The corners of his mouth curled upward uncontrollably. He almost lunged in for a hug but was stopped by one finger pressed against his shoulder. Stop it. Sit properly, Mom said, withdrawing her hand and facing forward again. Mom never says sweet things. She doesn't know how, but that sentence meant she would never leave him. Dad sat there grinning so hard his eyes became slits. That night, after we got home, Dad tucked me into bed. When I woke up in the middle of the night to get some water, I heard sounds from their room. George, that's enough. Mom's voice was restrained, almost warning. Honey, my heart still hurts. Comfort me a little more. Sigh. Dad was definitely acting spoiled again. A few days later, it was Dad's birthday. Mom waved a hand grandly and gave him a pink sports car. Dad hugged and kissed Mom repeatedly until she nearly lost her patience, then wisely stopped just in time. He drove us out for a celebratory spin. When we returned, several unexpected guests were standing at the door. Grandpa and Grandma from the Wong family, along with my maternal grandparents, were all there, arguing heatedly. The moment they saw us, they fell silent. Grandpa's face darkened even further when he saw the car. Arguing loudly at the front door looked improper. Mom unlocked the door. Come in and talk. Alexander, go back to your room first, Dad said, escorting me inside. The moment they weren't paying attention, I hid behind a large potted plant. Dad leaned toward Mom and whispered in her ear, Honey, they look really fierce. Chapter 20. Grandpa's anger had completely exploded. He pointed at Dad and roared at Grandpa Wong. You old fool. Look at the vixen you raised. Look what he's turned my daughter into. You watch your mouth. You old brute. Brandon shot back. Wasn't it your daughter who agreed willingly? Grandpa's face trembled with rage. What did you say back when we arranged that meeting? You said your son was mature, steady, responsible. Look at him. Which of those words has anything to do with him? This is outright fraud. Brandon sneered. I did say that, but Willow met him herself. She was dazzled by his looks and agreed in less than a day. How is that my fault? Grandma joined the fray in her shrill voice. George is a disaster. What does he have besides his face? Before, we tolerated him for his family background. Now he's nothing. Willow, divorce him immediately. Mrs. Wong immediately objected. Divorce for what? Alexander is already 5 years old. Can't you think about the child? Huh? I scratched my head in confusion. Wasn't the Wong family previously fanning the flames to separate Mom and Dad? Why the sudden change in tone? Enough. Mom pressed her fingers to her temple and cut off the argument that was hurting both sides. What exactly did you come here for? Mr. Wong. Mrs. Wong, you first. Brandon gave Mrs. Wong a look. She understood and said, We've come to take George back. Dad's eyes widened. Have you two been possessed by something unclean? Mom's lips twitched slightly. Mrs. Wong gave an awkward smile. Your father, I mean Brandon, and I have thought it through carefully. These 30+ years of affection weren't fake, blood relation or not. You're the child we raised. Her eyes even reddened slightly as she spoke. We were momentarily confused before, misled by certain matters. George, you're still our son. The Wong family is still your home. Brandon nodded eagerly beside her, almost ingratiating. That press conference was for the outside world. Behind closed doors, we're still family. The company, if you want it. Dad can still hand it over to you. Dad didn't respond immediately. He tilted his head slightly, his eyes unreadable. He leisurely picked up an orange from the coffee table and began peeling it. His long fingers moved elegantly, as if he were crafting a piece of art. Oh, he broke off a segment but didn't eat it, just rolled it between his fingers. And Makoto, what about your biological son? Mrs. Wong hurriedly said, We'll explain it to Makoto. He just returned and is still adjusting. You two brothers can get along well. Brothers. Dad chuckled softly. He tossed the orange segment into his mouth. His cheeks puffed slightly like a squirrel storing food, but his gaze turned cold. Mrs. Wong, did you forget? You already held a press conference announcing you'd severed ties with me. The entire internet saw it. Now you say we're family again. Even I feel tired watching how fast you change faces. Grandpa, growing impatient, slammed his hand on the table. George, don't push your luck. The Wong family is willing to take you back. That's a blessing beyond measure for you. And you're acting arrogant. Dad acted as if startled. He immediately shrank his shoulders and turned to throw himself into Mom's arms, his voice trembling. Honey, he's yelling at me. I'm scared. Mom was speechless. Grandpa's mustache quivered with fury. You're a grown man, running into a woman's arms at every turn. What kind of behavior is that? Dad lifted his head from Mom's shoulder, revealing one eye, and said timidly, My wife lets me hide in her arms. What's it to you? If you've got the ability, go find someone to hide in too. Chapter 21. Grandpa was so furious he nearly fainted. Grandma hurried to steady him while glaring viciously at Dad. Useless thing. Willow, look at him. How is he worthy of you? Get divorced. Mom will find you someone better. I understand why the Wong family came. What about you? Mom ignored their shouting and went straight to the point. Grandpa suppressed his anger and said, Do you remember that boy from the Chan family? Who? Mom looked blank. My old friend's son. You met him when you were little. He's quite accomplished now, started his own company and made it into the top 10 influential figures. Oh, Mom responded coolly, seeing Grandpa about to lose his temper again. Grandma tugged at his sleeve. He took a deep breath. He came to the house. He saw your situation in the news. He's always liked you. He doesn't mind that you were married. And he's willing to raise Alexander. He asked your mother and me to come speak on his behalf. Is he insane? Dad practically leapt into the air, completely bristling. That dog. Mom wrapped an arm around his waist. George, calm down. Honey. Dad's eyes welled up instantly. This time he was genuinely hurt. Tears streaming down in earnest. They all want to take you away. Honey, I really only have you and Alexander. Mom stroked his back gently. All right. Stop crying. No one can take Alexander or me away. Then her voice turned cold. I understand why you're here today. You can all leave now. Mrs. Wong hesitated. George. Mom frowned. If you don't leave, I'll have security escort you out. Her patience was gone. Her face was completely cold. They didn't dare say anything more and left in embarrassment. I ran over to comfort Dad. Stop crying. Dad, if your eyes get swollen, you won't look handsome when you take me to school tomorrow. Ah, really? Dad wiped his face immediately and stopped crying. He rushed off to the bathroom to wash his face. I turned to Mom. Are Grandpa and Grandma from the Wong family really trying to take Dad back? Of course not, Mom said, leaning back on the sofa. A while ago, Makoto proposed a very high-risk plan. If it succeeded, it would secure his position and elevate Wong Corporation even further. Brandon thought about it for 2 days and approved it. I climbed onto the sofa beside her, so it failed. Alexander is very smart. She pinched my cheek. Not only did it fail, it drained the foundation of Wong Corporation. Realization dawned on me. So that's why they wanted Dad back, to use Lu Corporation to pull them up again. Dad shuffled over and sat on Mom's other side, his voice small. But, your parents really don't like me. And that guy with the last name Chan, he sounds impressive. Mom rolled her eyes. Instead of worrying that I'll like him, you should worry that he might like you. What does that mean? Dad's brain seemed to short-circuit. Oh, he likes men, especially good-looking men. I suspect he just wanted me as a shield. Ah. Mom patted his face lightly with amusement. So you should be careful. Dad looked completely stunned. Mom picked up her phone and made a call. Send the file from my office to the prosecutor's office. A few days later, the media was flooded with reports that Wong Corporation was facing bankruptcy due to a broken capital chain, and that Lu Qian, the former head of Lu Corporation, was under investigation for suspected economic crimes. Dad scrolled through his phone, resting his chin on Mom's shoulder, clicking his tongue. Honey, you move fast. Mom ignored him, swiping through emails on her tablet. But, Dad leaned closer, blinking. Honey, about your parents, are you really not upset at all? Mom's fingers paused. She turned to look at him. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating her cool profile. In her usually calm eyes, I'm used to it, she said quietly, turning back to her screen. From childhood to now, I've never felt parental love to them. Family has always been less important than interest. Dad said nothing. He simply wrapped his arms around her from behind, buried his face in the curve of her neck, and gently nuzzled her. I sat on the carpet building blocks, feeling warmth spread through my chest. Dad may be clingy, dramatic, and sometimes exhausting, but no one understands Mom better than he does, and no one cherishes her more. Chapter 22. After school that day, Dad held my hand as we strolled slowly toward the parking lot, crunching over yellowed fallen leaves. Makoto was standing beneath a plane tree, looking haggard and worn. He stepped forward and blocked our path, handing Dad a document envelope. Inside was a newspaper. One headline read, Wong family heir kidnapped, kidnappers demand 20 million ransom. There was a photo printed beside it, a boy tied to a chair, blood streaming down his forehead. Dad's face turned deathly pale. His whole body trembled in shock. Fine beads of sweat formed on his forehead. He had to brace himself against the tree trunk to avoid collapsing. Dad. I panicked and quickly grabbed onto him. Makoto smiled maliciously. George, this must be your nightmare. Right. You were right. The Wong family is a rotten swamp. You took my identity, and you almost died in my place once. Now we're even. He turned and walked away without looking back. It took Dad a long time to steady himself. He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the fear and vulnerability had been pressed down. Though his face remained pale, he crouched and pulled me into a tight embrace, so tight it almost hurt. Dad, I whispered. I'm fine, he said in a muffled voice. Alexander, let Dad take a moment. I'll be okay soon. When we got home, he was unusually silent. He quietly put on an apron and went into the kitchen. When Mom returned from work, he didn't cling to her or complain about Makoto causing trouble again. Dad made her favorite dish, steamed sea bass. The timing was perfect. The fish tender, the broth clear. He also stir-fried several light side dishes and even arranged the plating with extra care. "Why are you so well-behaved today?" Mom asked. Dad forced a smile. "Nothing. You've worked hard. I just wanted to make something nice for you." Mom didn't press further. After dinner, Dad resumed his knitting project. Mom called me into the study. I told her everything from beginning to end. "Mom, what exactly happened? Are the scars on Dad's body from that time?" Mom crouched down in front of me. After thinking quietly for a moment, she said, "Alexander, let Mom tell you a story." Chapter 23. Mom said there was once a little boy born into an extremely wealthy family. His father was a powerful businessman and a famous philanthropist. His mother was a very well-known movie star. All the other children envied him. The boy thought he was happy, too, but he only saw his parents a few times a year. What accompanied him as he grew up were a vast, empty mansion, housekeepers, and a chubby orange cat. When he was 12, his father's business partner launched a parent-child project. It was a great success, so they held a celebration banquet and invited the three of them as a family. The boy was thrilled. He had never gone out with both of his parents before. This was the first time. In the car, he was so excited he couldn't sit still. He kept asking his parents questions, one after another. They grew impatient and scolded him coldly. He fell silent, crestfallen. Then suddenly, a truck blocked the road in front of them. Several men jumped down, dragged them out of the car, tied them up, and threw them into the back of another vehicle. They were taken to an unfinished building. It turned out that his father had used ruthless tactics in business. He owed many workers unpaid wages, pushing some of them to the brink, even to suicide. To retaliate, several workers had carefully planned the kidnapping. The father, who always stood tall and imposing in front of the boy, knelt on the ground and begged the kidnappers to spare him. The kidnappers said that as long as he repaid the wages and didn't call the police, they would let them go. The father immediately agreed. Nodding frantically, he left his wife and son in the kidnappers' hands and went back to gather the money. The kidnappers believed him and let him go. But instead of raising the money, the father went to the police. He even declared arrogantly that he would never bow to kidnappers. The kidnappers were furious. They beat the mother and son brutally. The boy watched his mother cry pitifully and used his small body to shield her. After venting their rage, the kidnappers locked them in a dark room. There was nothing inside except a small, broken window. Each day they were given only a tiny amount of food and water. The mother said the boy was young and didn't need much. She ate most of the food herself and only gave him water. 2 days later, the kidnappers suddenly left. No one was guarding them outside. The mother climbed onto the boy's shoulders and squeezed through the small broken window. The boy thought she would take him with her, but with tears in her eyes, she said she would go get help and come back for him. When the kidnappers returned and found her gone, they were enraged. They beat the boy until his head was covered in blood. They tied him to a chair and took a photograph, sending it to his father with a demand for $20 million in ransom. $20 million was not an impossible sum for the Wong Corporation, but at that time, the company was in the middle of a crucial transition, and cash flow was tight. Instead of paying, his father leaked the incident to the media, hoping that public exposure would intimidate the kidnappers. The kidnappers panicked. They were eager to flee and left one man behind to deal with the boy. In the end, that man softened. He slashed several cuts across the boy's back, leaving him bleeding heavily. Then he drove him to a remote alley near the school and dumped him beside a trash can. Left him there, to live or die on his own. Chapter 24. The boy lay there on the cold ground, quietly feeling the life draining out of his body. Several stray dogs circled around him, sniffing non-stop, waiting for him to stop breathing so they could tear him apart. No one knew how long it had been when a girl found him. She grabbed a stick and, with fierce determination, drove the dogs away. Then she carried him on her back to the hospital. Through half-conscious eyes, the boy glimpsed the school uniform she was wearing. It seemed to have the name of a high school printed on it. His mind was foggy. He couldn't remember clearly, but he thought to himself that one day he would find this heroine who had saved him and repay her properly. The boy survived. After returning to the Wong household, he could never again feel close to his parents, and he discovered that the orange cat who had accompanied him for years was gone. The housekeeper said the cat had run away, but the boy clearly saw the guilt on her face. It wasn't until he turned 18 that he discovered the truth. The father, whom the public praised as a great philanthropist, secretly enjoyed abusing cats. There were even many cats locked in the basement. The boy was furious. He confronted his father, demanding to know whether his own cat had been killed as well. His father rushed forward and hit him. But at 18, the boy was strong, and his father, weakened by years of indulgence in alcohol and excess, was no match for him. He beat his father badly. For himself, and for those poor animals. He took many photographs and threatened that if his father ever abused cats again, he would release the evidence. His father finally compromised. All the cats were released and given proper arrangements. The boy was utterly disappointed in that household. He refused to live according to his parents' plans ever again. He began to indulge himself recklessly. He tore up his admission letter from a prestigious university, raced cars, gambled on horses, played games, anything except doing something proper. The Wang family was rich enough. If he wanted to burn through money, he would. And if he burned through it all, he'd just be reborn into wealth again. The only regret was that he still hadn't repaid the heroine who had saved him. Until he turned 24. His parents confiscated his sports car and forced him to attend a blind date. And there he saw her, the heroine who had haunted his dreams. In that instant, his whole world lit up. Before she could even speak, he eagerly nodded and said, "I'm willing." If the heroine wanted his life, he would give it to her, let alone just himself. The heroine fell silent for a moment. Then she said she only needed a marriage alliance partner. After marriage, he could do whatever he wanted. She wouldn't interfere. She would give him enough money. He could buy whatever he wanted, play however he liked, as long as he didn't act recklessly. She would satisfy him. The boy felt a little disappointed, but that was fine. Marry first, talk later. The heroine was cold, intimidatingly so. No problem. He could be blazing with passion and melt her eventually. With his face and this body of his, forget women. Even men would fall at the hem of his suit trousers. Sure enough, after relentless persistence and shameless pursuit, he finally succeeded in climbing into the heroine's bed. Chapter 25. After hearing the story, I felt a strange sense of loss. I never imagined that Dad, who always acted like nothing in the world could truly bother him, had such a painful past. So that was how the scars on his body had come to be. But I still didn't understand. Then why did Dad cry so hard the day he found out about his real identity? I asked. Mom's temple twitched violently. He was just trying to make a scene, she said. He looked like he was crying pitifully, but his hand was already reaching into my. She suddenly realized what she was about to say and stopped abruptly. I didn't quite get it. Dad probably just wanted to tickle Mom, but later, he was secretly crying under the blanket too. He was so upset he even took his clothes off. Mom closed her eyes and took several deep breaths before forcing out a smile. Your dad was playing around. Oh, I said in sudden realization. He was planning to jump up and scare you, right? Right. The expression on Mom's face looked like she wanted to murder someone. She turned her head and muttered under her breath, "George, you're dead." I threw myself into her arms. So, Mom, does the heroine really love that boy? Mom paused for a moment, then smiled and nodded. Yes, she does. I ran into the living room. Dad was sitting on the carpet, frowning as he tried to untangle a hopelessly knotted mess of yarn. Dad, he glanced up at me in the middle of his battle. I want to hear a story. Now. I'll tell you one tonight before bed. No, I want one now. I leaned close to his face. How about I trade you a secret? He narrowed his eyes. What secret? He pretended to think deeply. Tell me first. If I'm satisfied, I'll tell you a story. I leaned into his ear and whispered. The heroine said she really loves that boy. Huh? He froze at the random sentence, then suddenly understood. His eyes burst with dazzling light. What did you say? Say that again. So I repeated it. He turned his head and looked at Mom, who was leaning against the study doorway. His eyes grew moist. Honey. He jumped up and charged toward her. Bang. Mom slammed the door shut and locked it. Dad pressed himself against the door and shouted. Honey, you told Alexander that, didn't you? It had to be you. I heard it. You can't take it back now. I tugged at his pant leg. So can you tell me a story now? Dad scooped me up in his arms. All right then. What kind of story does my precious son want to hear? I said. The domineering iceberg CEO and her dramatic, clingy husband. Dad was speechless. Where did you even get that from? He rubbed his forehead and shook his head. I put on a cold, aloof expression just like Mom's, slightly lifting my chin. Hurry up. Fine. Dad sighed, pulling me down to sit on the carpet with him. You and your mom are my natural-born nemesis. Chapter 26. At the very beginning, the iceberg CEO wasn't an iceberg at all. She loved to laugh and joke. When she was born, a fortune teller examined her fate and declared that she was her parents' lucky star, destined to bring them prosperity. Coincidentally, that very year her parents' startup succeeded. They signed several major contracts in a row, and the company expanded rapidly. Her parents believed the fortune teller completely. They doted on her. When she was 4, the company encountered a major crisis. Her parents were frantic. It seemed as though her luck aura had suddenly failed. In desperation, her parents sought out another fortune teller. This one said she was born with an ominous fate. She would bring harm to her father and mother. When she was young, it hadn't manifested yet, but as she grew older, it would. The only solution was to send her away and let him secretly perform rituals to neutralize the misfortune. Her parents were terrified. They sent her to live with her grandparents and gave the fortune teller a large sum of money. Strangely enough, after she left, the company secured several investments and stabilized. Within a year, its market value doubled. And so her parents left her with her grandparents to raise. When she was 6 and ready to start elementary school, her grandparents sent her back. Her parents still felt uneasy. They rented an apartment near her school and arranged for a housekeeper. She lived there alone. She studied hard and ranked first in every exam. That made her parents proud. On her 10th birthday, they brought her back home and held a birthday banquet for her. All the guests were her parents' business associates. She didn't recognize a single one. No one spoke to her. She quietly found a corner and stayed there by herself. Suddenly, a commotion broke out. A woman in her 30s stormed in with a boy, claiming she had brought the child to meet his father. Her birthday banquet instantly turned into a farce. Her mother hysterically demanded answers. Her father apologized in a low voice at first, but soon began shouting back. They argued fiercely. No one noticed the little girl trembling in the corner. After that, her father stopped pretending altogether. He simply stopped coming home, keeping several mistresses and fathering multiple illegitimate children. Her mother seemed to lose her mind. Pointing at the girl, she would beat and scold her. "It's you. It must be you. The misfortune on you wasn't fully cleansed. That's why you ruined my relationship with your father." She drove the girl out of the house. From then on, the girl grew more and more withdrawn. She went to school alone, ate alone, lived alone. When she was 15, she had just started her first year of high school. One day, her teacher's lecture was unbearably dull, and she was so sleepy she could barely stay awake. So she secretly slipped out of campus and took a shortcut to buy some spicy snacks. On the way, she saw a pack of stray dogs surrounding someone. She thought, this person is lying beside a trash can. Maybe no one wants him either. Just like no one wanted her. Taking him back to keep herself company didn't sound like a bad idea. So she grabbed a stick and drove the dogs away. The boy lying there was covered in blood. She was startled and quickly carried him to the hospital. She had planned to wait until he woke up before leaving, but the teacher had already discovered she skipped class and informed her parents. Her mother screamed curses at her over the phone, so she had no choice but to return to school. Years later, she went to university. There she met a classmate named Makoto, gentle-looking, with delicate features and a shy smile. He ignored the aura that kept others at a distance. He reached out to greet her and found every excuse imaginable to ask her out. It was the first time anyone had been so warm toward her. Most people saw her cold exterior and didn't dare approach her, but in truth, she was easy to get along with. She agreed to Makoto's invitation. Chapter 27. Later, Makoto confessed his feelings to her. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. It was her first relationship. She didn't know how to express affection. Her roommate told her that if she didn't know what to say, she could always give gifts. So she bought Makoto many expensive things: a laptop, a phone, designer sneakers. When Makoto received the gifts, he was thrilled and excited, showering her with sweet talk, but she didn't feel particularly happy. His tastes and habits were completely different from hers. Yet when she saw his smiling face, she decided to endure it. She could always go home and eat a couple more packs of spicy snacks afterward. They dated for half a year. Makoto asked what she wanted for her birthday the following month. She thought about it. He couldn't afford anything too expensive. Since her roommate had recently been knitting a scarf for her boyfriend, she casually said she wanted a scarf hand-knit by her boyfriend. Makoto smiled and agreed, but later he said he was too busy and didn't have time to knit. She was disappointed, but she nodded and said she understood. However, the man who didn't have time to knit a scarf somehow had time to hold a freshman girl and kiss her. To be honest, she was furious. She even took photos, intending to post them in the university group chat, but after thinking it over, she let it go. He had given her a valuable lesson, proof that love was unreliable. So she calmly broke up with him and deleted all contact information. Not long after, she entered the Lu Corporation. Her father didn't want her to take power. He only wanted her to marry for alliance. She persuaded her mother to cooperate with her and gradually sidelined her father. But to completely seize control of Lu Corporation in a short period of time, she truly did need a marriage alliance. Her father listed many candidates. The youngest one was still 12 years older than her. One night, feeling frustrated, she sat at a bar drinking alone. A noisy group entered. The man in the center caught her attention instantly. So beautiful. It wasn't quite appropriate to use that word for a man, but at that moment, that was the only word in her mind. She immediately had someone investigate everything about him. Her heart raced with excitement. Wasn't this the perfect marriage alliance partner? She didn't hesitate. She contacted the Wang family parents and arranged the blind date. After negotiating terms, both sides were satisfied. The men agreed quickly. After marriage, she gave him a black card with no spending limit. After all, she had spent plenty on a boyfriend who wasn't that satisfactory. A husband who was satisfactory should naturally receive even more. With the Wang family's support, she firmly established her position, took full control of Lu Corporation, and became CEO. Her father could only stay home in awkward silence with her mother. The illegitimate children were dealt with harshly. No one dared to trouble her again. Later, The CEO discovered that the Wang family's business methods were too ruthless, so she gradually cut off many cooperative projects and distanced herself. She thought life would continue like that, steady and unchanged, but no one had warned her that her husband was such a dramatic, clingy handful. Finally, on a dark, windy night, after drinking a little too much, the two of them half resisted and half gave in and ended up tangled together. When he woke up, he wore a tragic expression and declared that his pure body had now been given to her, and from now on she had to take responsibility. It was at that moment that the CEO realized this clingy pest had completely attached himself to her, but what could she do? At the end of the day, she had also lacked willpower and succumbed to temptation. Still, she made one thing clear in advance: she would not take care of the household. She was devoted to her career. George paused and asked seriously if she was certain. She nodded solemnly. George let out a sigh of relief and said it was fine, he could take care of the household. Only much later did the CEO understand why he had been relieved. Because he simply had no talent for business. He couldn't even read financial statements. This clingy pest had traded his intelligence for that handsome face. So the condition she proposed had been exactly what he wanted. To prove his determination to take care of the family, the clingy pest painstakingly began learning how to cook. The female CEO almost couldn't bear to watch, afraid he might chop off his own fingers. During that period, she didn't even dare to go home. The dishes on the table were more thrilling than the scheming and backstabbing at a negotiation table. It would have been one thing if the cooking skills weren't great, but on top of that, there was this obsession with innovation. Any ingredients were boldly thrown together. Braised eggplant with apples and oranges, stir-fried cilantro with green peppers, and the worst of all, black-bone chicken stewed with red dragon fruit. Good grief, when she lifted the lid, she thought the chicken had coughed up blood from sheer anger. The chicken hadn't vomited blood from anger, she was the one about to vomit blood from eating it. After she threatened to move into the study to sleep, the other party finally stopped the innovation, looking utterly aggrieved, and obediently went back to cooking traditional dishes. And honestly, as long as there was no innovation, it actually tasted pretty good. Chapter 28. The child came unexpectedly. The female CEO hadn't planned to keep it. They had always taken precautions, but the doctor said there was still a 2% chance of getting hit. She touched her belly and froze. Just 2%? Could it be a gift from heaven? After she returned, she told the clingy rascal about it. She felt this wasn't something for one person to decide alone. The clingy rascal didn't show much reaction, calm to a surprising degree, but he started walking with his arms and legs moving stiffly on the same side, bumped himself into 2 big lumps, and when pouring hot water, nearly poured it onto his own hand. If the CEO hadn't stopped him in time, his hand would have been scalded into something like a pig's trotter. That night, he finally reacted, both happy and worried. He said neither of them had ever received familial love, and they didn't know how to be parents. What if they turned out like their own parents? Wouldn't the child suffer terribly after being born? The CEO nodded. That was her concern as well. The clingy rascal asked for 3 days to think it over carefully. He seriously looked up a lot of information. Can parents who are emotionally abnormal raise a normal child? How do parents who lack love treat their children? She watched the dark circles under his eyes deepen layer by layer, and suddenly felt a pang in her heart. Finally, he closed his laptop and said, "Honey, let's go see a psychologist." After listening to their story, the doctor gave a suggestion: don't have the baby. They both froze, stammering as they asked if there was no other choice. Did it really mean they couldn't keep this child? The doctor smiled. Haven't you already made your choice? The two of them suddenly understood. They stuffed a thick red envelope into the doctor's hands. After returning home, the clingy rascal signed up for a prenatal class. Yes, he was the one attending the prenatal class, sitting among a group of pregnant women. He said only by experiencing it firsthand could he truly learn how to take care of a pregnant woman. When the pregnancy reached 5 months, he signed up for a parenting class as well. The CEO flipped through his notes, her heart softening. A few months later, the baby was born. The tiny child was a soft, squishy little bundle. All the skills he had learned seemed useless. He didn't even dare to hold the baby. Watching him sleep so sweetly, the clingy rascal cried with tears and snot streaming down his face. The CEO turned her head away in mock disgust. They didn't give their son a name, because they couldn't think of anything worthy of their precious boy, so they temporarily called him Little Dot. After finishing her postnatal confinement period, she returned to work. Their son cried, looking for his mother. With no other option, the clingy rascal bought a wig and tied a milk bottle to his chest, pretending to be the mother to feed him. When their son turned 1 year old, the clingy rascal hoisted him onto his shoulders. The boy laughed so hard that drool streamed down his chin. Watching this scene, the CEO finally decided on a name: Alexander. Chapter 29. After that, I sat on Dad's lap, swinging my head back and forth. He said, after that, President Lu continued striving and expanding her business empire, while young Master Wang remained unwavering, wholeheartedly taking care of his precious son. Is that so, Mom? I looked toward Mom, who had come out of the study at some point. She leaned against the doorway, smiling softly, her eyes full of warmth, more or less. I looked into Dad's eyes and asked, so the day you found out about your background, you really weren't that sad? Dad chuckled and pinched my cheek. No, if anything, I felt relieved. I said, but you complained to me that Mom doesn't understand romance. Mom's expression darkened slightly. George, what nonsense have you been telling our son again? No. Dad panicked, flustered. I just said it casually. Ale, how do you remember things so clearly? Honey, don't walk away. I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. I promise I'll never talk nonsense in front of Ale again. Dad chased after Mom, waving his arms and apologizing frantically. I couldn't help but burst into laughter. I think they are in love. Mom is cold and strict, steady and disciplined. Dad loves to play, loves to joke, loves to make a fuss and jump around. Two people who seem completely mismatched somehow perfectly made up for the lacks of each other's youth, filling in that missing piece of emptiness. I think I understand the meaning of my name now. Alexander, the one who protects you, who stays soft for you when the world is sharp.